I mean, you think about why we have a skills gap in the United States is, well, one thing, we're having less kids, right? We're having fewer children. We have less bodies
Right,
in the US. And so we have
right.
to, so at the same time, so we have a government policies that saying, hey, we want fewer immigrants, people coming in, but at the same time, our birth
Yeah,
rate is low.
yeah,
We're
yeah.
and this is not to be political, right? I don't care what your politics
Right,
are. The reality is you need people to do these skilled jobs. We don't
yes.
have enough people.
Alpha Day, it's your innovation coach, Rob Jackson, and welcome to another edition of the Innovate Guam podcast, the podcast where we look at all things innovation, technology, and improvement related to the island of Guam. Like, subscribe, and follow me on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, IG, and Substack. My podcasts drop beginning of each week. Also, look for my Innovate column in the Pacific Daily News the first and third Friday of each month. All right, my guest today is someone who brings a unique and necessary lens to innovation, blending cultural insight, workforce strategy, and a deep understanding of community based development. Here's a quick snapshot of his background. He is founder and lead consultant at GuideStar Enterprises, specializing in cultural intelligence, workforce readiness, and organizational strategy. He is known as a cultural futurist. Glenn helps organizations embrace diversity while preparing for a rapidly evolving world. He is former executive director of a national faith-based nonprofit managing a multi-million dollar budget and hundreds of stakeholders. He is an Air Force veteran who brings discipline, systems thinking, and mission orientation to his consulting and teaching. And yes, he is a 1993 graduate of the United States Air Force Academy. Proud to be 93,
All right.
fellow classmate, and has a master's degree along with certifications as a Six Sigma Black Belt, project management professional, and as a certified speaking professional. Glenn is a published author, speaker, and scuba diver who believes innovation starts with people and culture, not just technology. He's worked with clients across government, education, tech, and nonprofit sectors, and he's deeply interested in the unique opportunities facing Guam as a Pacific hub for innovation. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the show Mr. Glen Guyton.
Hello, everyone.
Glenn.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
All right, I'm loving the opportunity to reconnect with old classmates and stuff like that. It's been a while. It's good to see you out doing great things.
Yes, sir. I even wore my Polynesian shirt, so I'm ready. I'm ready for this.
I see you. I see you. So we have a tradition here at the Innovate Guam podcast. We start off with some icebreaker questions to kind of see
Okay.
where your head is at in terms of innovation. So, what's your definition of innovation, and what does innovation mean to you personally?
So I believe innovation is necessity meeting imagination. So when a
Mm,
real need arises, creativity and action combine to craft a practical but yet novel solution. I don't know if you remember the old schoolhouse rock where they talk about mother necessity. That's kind of how I think
yes.
about innovation. You know, innovation comes when we have these pressing challenges. And I also think that innovation comes with a sense of creative freedom.
Mm, yeah. Yeah. So, what is your favorite innovation or piece of technology, past or present?
All right, so I'm a little bit of a nerd, and this really came from watching Star Trek Enterprise. I think it's Velcro.
Velcro.
Yeah,
That's a
Velcro is pretty.
surprising one.
Yeah,
Yes.
it's pretty useful. Like, right? I mean, every industry uses Velcro for some reason, right? From the tech
Yes.
industry to food industry, everybody uses Velcro. It's such a amazing yet simple product, right?
Yes. Absolutely. So, Who is your favorite innovator of all time and why?
Okay, now this is a fun one. You might not have thought about this one. Clarence
Okay.
Saunders. Do you know who Clarence Saunders is?
No.
He was a
Talk to
Memphis,
me.
yeah, he was a Memphis entrepreneur, and he opened Piggly Wiggly. So you might have heard about
Oh, Piggly Wiggly. Yes,
Piggly
I know
Wiggly.
Piggly Wigglies.
Yeah, so if you're from the South, you're familiar with Piggly Wiggly. But what was his innovation? His innovation was self-service grocery stores where the customer could go and browse and pick what they needed. Before that, if you watch the old shows like the old Western shows, you would hand a list to the store manager or to the grocer. They would go back and pick up everything. So it was really time limiting, time consuming. If you had a impulse to get something else, you probably wouldn't get it because it wasn't on the list. So Clarence Saunders, Piggly Wiggly revolutionized how we shop.
Oh, wow, I never knew this.
Yeah,
That's
right.
that's great.
It's great.
That's
Okay,
great
so look,
insight.
here's a bonus one. My other one is whoever decided you could smile in photographs. Uh, you know, you look at the old pictures, nobody smiled.
Yes.
I don't know what that's about.
Innovation leaders, it's your innovation coach, Rob Jackson here. Are you ready to elevate your vehicle fleet operations? Fleet Solutions is an AI enabled fleet management system. Fleet Solutions provides real time video, smart analytics, and total efficiency. Keep your people safe and keep your business moving forward faster than ever before. Fleet Solutions, arriving tomorrow, today. Visit thefleetsolutions.net or call 671 988 9748 to schedule your personalized demo and revolutionize your fleet operations today. So, Glenn, you and I are both passionate scuba divers.
Yes.
Tell me the one underwater discovery that still inspires you uh, and inspires your work as a futurist.
Oh man, that's a tough one. I'm sure you get to scuba dive more than I do. But I think one thing that kind of still amazes me is the darkness of depth, right? As you go
Mm,
down, it gets darker, and you really have to think about all of the other cues that are going on around you. You have to look at your gauges, you have to look at your buddy. You have to notice all of the subtle things that happen as you start to go down. And I think that's kind of like as we think about this futurism thing, like you have to pay attention to all of the little warning signs, right? You have to adjust your buoyancy as you get deeper. Your breathing has to change in order to keep that neutral buoyancy. So it's a lot of little signals that you have to pay attention to as you go deeper, as the visual cues change. And I mean, it can be overwhelming. I think one of the things that some of my friends that don't scuba dive are worried about are sharks, right? Oh, the shark is going to eat me. I've seen a number of sharks, large sharks, reef sharks, big sharks in Hawaii. And you know what? The thing that
it's an exciting experience.
it's an exciting experience, right? But the thing that you think is going to kill you isn't what's going to kill you. It's the little things that you don't pay attention to, which will actually cost you your life when you're scuba diving.
Oh wow, so well spoken, and I think that's just so spot on because, like you said, it's those little things. If you
Yeah,
just kind of take your eye off the ball as you go deeper, and then all of a sudden you can look up and you're in serious trouble, and
right,
you didn't even really know it. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's kind of how life is, right?
Yeah,
You're kind of
yeah.
going along and same old. And if you're taking your eye off of the ball, all of a sudden you look up and it's like, how in the world did I get here?
Right, right. Because as a leader, I think calm is better, right? See, because the sharks are not going to eat you. Maybe every now and then, if you get a certain kind of shark, it might eat you. But we need to start worried about the signs. Hey, how much oxygen? How is my breathing? Can I see my buddy? Is all my equipment? Have I tested all of my equipment before I even got into the water? Like those are the things that we have to pay attention. We're worried about this shark who's minding his own business, but we're missing the little things that are going to make us successful as a diver. Even the plan, right? You have to have a dive plan. I just
Yes.
I just had a dive in Greece, and they were like, "Hey, this is what we're going to do. These are the water conditions. These are the things to expect on this dive." and it made me much more calm as I did the dive.
Yeah, I love that. So tell me about your first dive. How did your first dive shape the way that you approach like new challenges on land?
Yeah,
Hmm.
I think just learn how to calm yourself and slow down. My first dive was in Hawaii, so that was might have been a mistake. So now I'm ruined forever, right? Your first dive on a big island in Hawaii, everything is so beautiful. The water conditions are perfect, but it gives you a chance just to see everything that's going around you know. So that's the standard for me, right? That clarity, uh just taking in everything that's going around you, and learning to be calm. I think it was the perfect first dive. It just helped me to love the sport of diving.
Okay. All right. So let's get into the meat of
Okay.
our talk here. So I'm going to start off a little bit out of order here.
Okay.
So you call yourself a cultural futurist.
Right.
Talk to me about what that is and what you bring to the table in terms of giving a different perspective to companies and organizations.
Well, I think when I talk about being a cultural futurist, all futurists use similar techniques and processes to kind of predict the future. Figure out what the outcomes are. But as a futurist, you can focus on different aspects of the future, what you're going to look at and what you're going to observe. Some focus on technology, some focus on financial indicators, because you can't do it all. But I do think it's important to look at all of these things, these different factors collectively, and see how it impacts people. Um, that makes the difference. You can't do any of these things in isolation. A piece of technology that works well in North America may not work well in South America, because there are some cultural norms and cultural expectations that will change how the same factor impacts the execution somewhere else. So as a cultural futurist, I really like to focus on how does this impact people? How will people integrate this new thing or be impacted by this new thing? So that's why I call myself a cultural futurist. I don't ever want us to forget the human aspect of change, and
Yes.
what that means for us in the future.
Yeah, and that's so important. And often we get, um, you know, so focused on other things that we forget that everything kind of begins and ends with people. And you say that all the time.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
say that innovation begins with people. So let's talk about it in terms of Guam. What makes Guam's workforce such a fertile ground for fresh new ideas?
All right. So, I must confess that, I've never been to Guam. And so I've tried to do some research to catch up. So some of these things are general, and you would have to do a deeper dive really to understand how these things uh, impact Guam and its people. But I think as we have to look at what's going on in the island. So I picked up a couple of statistics. What's the population growth rate? That's going to be a limiting factor, right? For Guam is the size of the land. You can't grow more land, right? That's one
Right,
thing. People, what's the birth rate? How's the repopulation process happening? And so Guam has experienced some growth, but not a lot of growth, right? It's slow, steady
right,
growth according to what I've seen. Um, where is the industry? So what shifts do you have to make um, as far as the population? One good thing about Guam is that it's a fairly young population. So there's great growth potential over the next, um, you know, 5, 10, 15 years, in which you can make some shifts in the culture and implement change, because 56% of the population is, um, well, yeah, about half the population is under the age of 16. So that's good. Um, you look at the industries. What industries are there? These are things that will impact Guam. It looks like a large percentage of people work for the government of Guam. So as you think about change, the government is definitely going to have to be involved, right? You're going to have to look at some public private partnerships in order to be effective in this community. Again, federal employees are a big part of this too. There are already some changes that are happening rapidly with this.
Yes.
So that's something that's not even a signal. That's like a
Yes.
definite. That's a definite thing. So how are you going to adapt to that? So those are some things I think are unique to Guam, and of course, the uniqueness of the environmental factors in a Pacific island. So how do you work with those things with any type of uh, innovation strategy? The people and the land are going to be very important, and the CHamoru values, as I understand them, talk about making things good for each other, this interdependence and mutual respect. And so again, coming from a U.S. perspective, where we're very driven by uh, the almighty dollar, we're very independent. Some of the things that work here in this very capitalistic, isolated type of community that we have in the U.S. on the mainland is going to be very different with an island culture, where there are other cultural factors that you have to pay attention to, and how people work together is really, really important.
Yeah, that's really great that you highlight, the way the sense of culture and place influence a region's ability to innovate. A lot of times you want to take that out of it. You just kind of say, well, this is the way we did it in this location.
Yeah.
Therefore, now you're going to bring it over here and you think it's going to work the same way, but it's a different culture, different set of values. And you got to understand how to move and navigate in that place versus just a cookie cutter approach. Really
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So you've described a three-step model for upskilling, and it talks about awareness, apprenticeship, and acceleration.
Yeah.
So can you walk us through what that looks like, particularly in its Guam context?
Yeah, but let me start with something that's maybe some of your older audience members. We're in that demographic now, right? We're getting older, but your older audience members may resonate with. In 1962, Kennedy gave a speech about going to the moon. He says, "We choose
Hmm.
to go to the moon not because it's easy, but because it's hard." Right? So he launched a national movement to get us to the moon, if you believe it. I don't know, Rob, do you believe we actually went to the moon?
Yes, I'm not buying into all of those conspiracy theories that we were out on a Hollywood lot and it
Right,
was
right.
Stanley Kubrick or I forgot the other director that they thought
Yeah, yeah.
did set that up. But yeah, no, not part of the tinfoil hat wearing
Oh,
crowd.
okay. So let's think about that as far as those three things you mentioned. We want to create awareness, right? So Kennedy said, "Hey, this is what we need to do. We're gonna go to the moon," and he started this movement. So I think as you think about Guam, these are things that we need to do, or you would need to do with any kind of launch. Uh, one of the ideas is data driven storytelling. You could launch an island wide campaign via social media, village hall meetings, radio, showcasing occupational gaps. One of the gaps that I've kind of researched says there are a limited number of computer and mathematical jobs on the island, despite this rising digital demand that we have. So you express that need. Hey, we need more people in this. This is why. You give a great inspirational speech. You broadcast it. We have social media. Kennedy didn't have social media. He just had radio at the time. But you launch something to tell the story, to spread this idea around the island. That's the first part of this innovative process, is just creating awareness, creating a buzz. And then
Yeah.
from that point, then you go to your apprenticeships. And again, I talked about public private partnerships. Maybe you work with the University of Guam to change its curriculum, have credit bearing digital boot camp modules to enhance programs, or to be complementary to other types of degree programs, so that everyone gets maybe a taste of these needed skills. Make it part of the core curriculum, get people working in these industries, or maybe you have people rotating between different um, technical skills and different types of work environments so that they understand the cross functionality between some of the technical skills that they are developing. I mean, I think, Rob, we have a good example of that, being at the Air Force Academy. All of us took a bunch of engineering, no matter what our major was. We took electrical engineering, uh, civil engineering. I mean, we it's so much engineering, right? Like I should have been an engineer, but calculus didn't do me too well, so I had to move on to management. But the Air Force had something in mind, right, to give us a certain skills as officers to be successful. So we had this really broad educational experience, and that's something that we can think about in the innovation realm. Like, what do we add to the core curriculum? How do we expand our knowledge base with our with this young population that we have? And then next is acceleration. So what do you do? If you think about the moon launch, they had all these different projects, the Apollo project. They had all these different missions to help us get one step closer to the moon. And so as you start thinking about these new innovative things that you're doing in education, you've got people hyped up about what you want to do in Guam, and you got this community sense. Yeah, we're going to do this together. Then you have, you know, actual boot camps or intensives uh, with mentors where people can start building these skills. You bring in alumni circles and have this continuous learning to keep that energy going, and you're building and building and building and building until eventually this becomes part of the culture. Now these things take time; they don't happen overnight. I mean,
Right,
these
right.
take years, but you got to be thinking about the future yesterday, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And I love the way that you broke out that model, because what we've been trying to do here on the podcast and in some of the other pursuits there is to lay out a vision of Guam as a 21st century tech and innovation hub. I
yeah,
think just by its geography,
yeah,
the blessing of its geography, it makes it an ideal spot to be able to do uh, tech and innovation, right?
yeah.
How do we get there? My personal belief is that we start off by delivering a 21st century tech and innovation support to the military, because the
Mm,
military needs it right now. And
yeah,
that's the way, the lens that the federal government and many in the states look at Guam, right? So we're the westernmost piece of US soil. We have all of these um, forward deployed forces at the tip of the spear in the Indo-PACOM region, going against near peer adversary out here. They need a um, solutions for maintenance, repair, overhaul, logistics, and sustainment. And not only because you have the tyranny of distance out here in the Pacific, and
mhm,
it's so isolated. But we believe that we're going to fight our next war in a contested logistics environment. So you have to be agile, you have to be nimble, you have to be able to bring more to the fight. So the thought is that what we really need to be able to do is to build up those kind of cottage industries for maintenance, repair, overhaul, logistics, and sustainment, but start with high tech in mind from the very beginning. Guam used to have a
mhm,
ship repair facility that, you know, like anywhere from 800 to 1,200 people employed, large industrial skills and stuff like that. That went away in the 90s during the first BRAC. But what
uh-huh,
if we brought back a ship submarine repair capability here? Maybe not government wise, maybe it's a public private partnership and stuff, but it was a smart factory. So, like from the very beginning, you built in additive manufacturing, IoT, AI, etc., to deliver better results in terms of the sustainment and logistics and maintenance support that you're doing, and then you grow that. And then all of a sudden, Guam begins to be known as this place where they're actually successfully using these cutting edge technologies, which then becomes a magnet for other kinds of workloads. Then maybe it becomes aerospace, then it becomes heavy equipment, and then maybe it becomes commercial kinds of workloads. Because guess what? We're right um, uh, with one foot in Asia and one foot in America. So there's Asian companies who'd like to
Mhm.
get a foothold into America who can use Guam as that gateway, just like there are American companies trying to get a foothold in Asia and can use Guam as their gateway into there. So now you have a real opportunity to build this vision of Guam as this tech and innovation hub of the future.
Yeah, I think one of the things I would caution you as a future is, what are you building for? Because you can't build as a futurist. I would say you can't build for the current need. You have to build for the predicted need. So where are these things going? Uh, where is manufacturing going? Where are these weapon systems going? What is it? What is conflict going to look like, you know, 30 years from now? That's what you need to gear up for, right? I mean, and so
Yes.
what is the present telling us now about not 10 years from now, but maybe 30 years from now? And again, technology moves so fast, so that's one that's really hard to predict. But I think one of the mistakes that we make is that we're gearing up for something that's already happened, right? We're
Yeah.
too late. Like,
Yeah.
you get you a new 8-track tape player, and and now somebody else is on the CDs. Like, you could have the best. Hey, we can really do these 8-track tape players. Look, I'm really dating myself, right? These 8-track tape players, but everybody else is on CDs. You know,
Yes.
so many times we start gearing up for the present, but we really have to start thinking about what are the signals for the future. And that's what I would encourage us to be to really think about, even as you work at these things in Guam. What are what are some of the what's the future potential? Not what Guam has always been, but what is Guam want to be, right?
Yes.
There's a
Yes.
saying that says the best way to predict the future is to create it. The guy, one of the guys that worked on the computer, said that the best way to predict the future is to create it. But
Create
then
it.
the
Yep.
other question was, if the best way to predict the future is to create it, is it already too late for us to create a healthy future?
Mm,
Because you know what happens?
mm.
We're living in our past paradigms, our current
Yes.
paradigms, and we're saying we're going to build this future, but we're actually building for the past.
Yes. 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 Man,
So
powerful things to think about.
yeah, so
Um,
how do we get these younger people that just think the stuff that we're doing, this is ridiculous. Why are we doing this?
yeah.
Those are the people that we need to tap into and figure out, okay, I'm going to create something that's never been created because I think this is what we need. Or, I think a lot about I mean, like Terminator, right?
Yeah.
Terminator gives us a message about how this AI thing might turn out. Are we paying attention to that?
Yeah. I love it. But I tell you, when I look at it, um, the vision that at least I see and others that I talk to is, instead of just looking at it in terms of maintenance and repair and sustainment support for today's ships and submarines, what does that future warfare look like? And I think what it looks like down the road is there's going to be swarms of unmanned vehicles, right?
Yeah, right.
Unmanned flying vehicles,
Yep.
underwater vehicles,
Yep.
surface vehicles. So those, you have an opportunity to build a cottage industry of um, manufacturing shipyard of the future for unmanned systems
Right.
out of Guam. And because we're talking about huge numbers, you're spitting out huge numbers of these things that are considered low cost and consumable almost, right? Because I don't know if you saw the Secretary of Defense's memo and um, um, uh, advertisement that he released last week about trying to basically unsheath the innovation, if you will, when it comes to unmanned systems, and to
Yeah.
stop thinking about them in terms of these very heavy bureaucratic systems and start
Mm,
thinking about them in terms of consumable armament. That's the
mm,
way I want you to start thinking about it going forward. So, what if we had cottage industries pumping out huge amounts of aerial, surface, and undersea um, um, unmanned
right.
systems and vehicles that were being used to swarm and overwhelm, you know, that near peer adversary out here in the Pacific. Now you start positioning Guam for that future, and now instead of using traditional logistics to build and support and sustain those systems, you're using additive manufacturing. You're printing your parts on demand right
Mm,
here to build that and to fix things. You're using AI and IoT to run like your own version of a micro gigafactory, like what Elon Musk is using to pump out Teslas, right?
right.
There are these huge gigafactories that are run by robots and IoT, and you have a small, very technically empowered workforce doing what it would have taken hundreds of thousands of people to do. But you're doing that with micro factories here on Guam because, like you said, there's only so much space here in Guam. So you can actually use that technological advantage to right size a smart factory of the future on Guam that won't need this huge footprint.
Yeah, well, one of the things I do like, again, as part of this research, is I saw that Guam has a digital equity plan, right?
Yeah,
So part of these things is you can think about, hey, okay, what is it that I want to do, right? Like you're articulating some things, but then what are the barriers, right, that are unique to Guam that will keep me from doing that? So you think about, again, limited land space. Um, my understanding that the infrastructure could use some improvement as far as internet speeds, some technology integration. So, what are the limitations that you have, and what industries do you need to create to overcome those limitations? Right. That's part of
yeah,
the issue. I mean, you think
yeah,
about why we have a skills gap in the United States is, well, one thing, we're having less kids, right? We're having fewer children. We have less bodies
right,
in the US. And so we have
right,
to, so at the same time, so we have a government policies that saying, hey, we want fewer immigrants, people coming in, but at the same time, our birth
yeah,
rate is low.
yeah,
We're
yeah,
and this is not to be political, right? I don't care what your politics
right,
are. The reality is you need people to do these skilled jobs. We don't
yes,
have enough people. We're not
yes,
having more babies.
yes,
We're saying that we're not letting, we're becoming more and more hostile toward immigrants. So how are we gonna be ready 20, 30 years from now in
correct.
in the US? So Guam needs to think about, yeah, what are our limitations and how are we going to overcome them, or what shift do we need to make in order to make sure that we are ready for the future that we're planning.
Yeah, yeah. So as you think about that, how can the public and private sector work better together in Guam to build that long-term innovation capacity?
Yeah, well, I think this digital equity plan is a good idea of working through these things. Um,
I will tell you, just to be candid, not to play politics here, because
okay,
it's not
okay,
about politics.
okay,
Uh, that is being significantly overhauled because under
okay.
the current administration, uh, digital equity is a bad word.
Well, the word equity, right? Is but that's not what it's
Yes,
supposed to be. It's not. It should
yes,
be.
but because of because of the nuanced phraseology of
Yeah,
digital equity,
yeah.
it is out of vogue. So the money and all of the program guidance that came down for that is
Yeah.
currently in being re overhauled
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
redone.
Yeah.
So
Well, that goes to kind of like I think when you start thinking about these things, how do you work at them? It's an acronym called PESTLE,
yeah,
PESTLE, right? So we have to look
yeah,
at the politics, the economic factors, the social factors, the technology factors, legal factors, the environmental factors, how all those things working together. So you can't leave out any one of those pieces, knowing that legislation, you know, is important. So having the right uh, advocates and activists to speak to the government, the right lobbyists is a part of this. And understanding that, yeah, politics plays a big role in this, but how do you clearly articulate these things, whether it's changing the name of programs, pivoting some, or understanding that you have to fund this program in order to get this other effective program funded. That's the
right,
complexity of this, right? Of the change.
right.
But I think that having officials in the right position that understand these things is really important. A lot of us don't pay attention to local politics, but if you're really going to make a shift in a place like
It
Guam,
starts at this level. Yeah,
yeah, you're going to have to talk to your local officials. You're going to have to build some community efforts, get your community mobilized. But again, that's part of this awareness. Who's driving these campaigns? How do you get people uh, connected? What are the rewards to have people um, engaged in these things to get this those the community led investment principle is something that I do believe in. So how do you motivate people to give and be a part of this and let their dollars start to vote and help shape some of the changes that you want to happen? Because people will still be, I think, even in Guam, probably driven by money and finance. How do we reward people and get those dollars in? I think that some of your partnerships may have to look beyond Guam, and maybe you start talking to the diaspora of the community of people from Guam, the Chamorro people that may be in Hawaii or
throughout
California,
Micronesia.
or
Yeah,
this Asian community, the broader Pacific Asian realm. How do you start drawing those people in? Because they may have resources that they want to put back into the island.
right, right. So cultural futurist perspective, right?
Yeah.
So tomorrow values, there's a word called, and please don't kill me with my pronunciation, but
Okay.
inafa'maolek.
Yeah.
Inafa'maolek talks about making things good for each other and
Yeah.
interdependence and mutual respect. That's
Yeah.
definitely a Chamorro value. So, like you said, different from the U.S., where maybe the um, very strict capitalist, almighty dollar kind of thing.
Yeah.
This needs to be framed in a sense of community and environment and sustainability, and all of those need to be
Yeah.
thought about and brought to bear when you're going forward with this, because it's part of the cultural values of the Chamorro people.
Right. Yeah, I think you have to make sure that whatever you do benefits the community, right? That there is a tangible tie to the community, resources, things that are going to lift up that community, and it's a mutual beneficial thing. And I think sometimes what happens is we bring in outsiders, cultural outsiders into these communities, and they just do stuff. They do stuff to the people. Hey, we're doing it for you. No, you're doing it to us. We need to be a part of this. We need to have our values respected and reflected in these changes. And it's important to know that culture, because sometimes, as you know, some cultures move a little bit faster, right? Because it's all about the individual and the individual accomplishment. And I mean, I've worked with a number of different cultures, and sometimes I've realized that I've had to ask questions a different way if I want to get the truth. One of the
Yes,
things that aggravates
yes,
me beyond measure is when I hear people in a dominant culture say, "Well, we asked this group, so just say it's a whatever marginalized group. We asked this group if it was okay if we did this. They said, "Oh yeah, go ahead. We're in full support." I said, "Of course they are in full support. They're dependent on you for their finances. They're dependent on you for their legal status. They're dependent on you for everything that's allows them to live in this whatever community. How are they going to tell you no?"
Yes.
Of course they're going to say it's fine. Of course they're going to say they want you to lead. So, you know, part of this process as a wise leader, as a wise change agent, you're going to have to figure out: am I asking the right questions to the right people in order to be able to effectively implement this in this culture? And let me give you a real world example. This is an old example, but it's a real world
Yes.
example. The car Nova. You heard the car Nova, right?
Yeah. The
Yeah.
Nova.
You can't
Chevy
sell it.
Nova.
You couldn't sell a Nova in Mexico. Why?
Ah, because of what Nova means.
Nova means no
Um,
go. Who's going to buy
yeah.
a car in Mexico that's
Yeah.
called
No
Nova, no
go.
go, right?
Yes.
It's real simple, right? It's the same vehicle, but it was a marketing disaster.
Yes. Yes.
Those
Yes.
are some things that can derail a great idea if you have no sense of the community and the people that you're trying to bring about this change in.
Yeah, and that's so important, particularly here in Guam, to be sensitive of it. Because I mean, let's be real here. Um, Guam is pretty young, if you will, right? It
Mm-hmm.
went from a Spanish colony to a U.S. colony to being conquered by the Japanese to
Mm.
then going back to being a quasi American colony, then
Yeah.
to an American territory. So it wasn't really until you get to the end of the 60s, 70s that they're moving out in real efforts of self determination. And even at this point right now, the question still is on the table about, do we want statehood? Do we
Mm.
want independence, or do we want free association? So we're
Right.
very young in this, and there is a perspective about what's right and what's best for the people, and it's not necessarily something that somebody can come in with from the
Right.
outside and impose on them, even if they think that they're doing it for good purposes. Hey, look at all this great technology. Look at this great vision that you could have, if you just do this. Well, hey, we're just one decade, literally decades out of colonialism, and you want us just to have something else just for shoved down our throats. Yeah,
Right. Yeah. Yeah, these are things again. You using that pestle acronym. We have to pay attention to all these things as we bring about change and as we bring new influences into any community. There's always these unintended consequences. I mean, even as you think about AI, what's the long term impact of AI? I mean, we're already seeing how social media negatively impacts the mental well being of young people, right? It's made a shift in how we think and process information. You have the dopamine impact of liking stuff. So it's changed how we interact and communicate with one another. That's an unintended consequence of a very great technology tool, but we're going to suffer some additional challenges in our culture because of those things. Like I've had to take some of the social media platforms off my phone because I found myself, doing a doom scrolling. I said, hey, this is not good for my mental health. So as
yeah,
we innovate, as we think about innovation, again, we have to figure out what is going to be the impact. What are the barriers that we have to make these changes? And I don't think that should necessarily stop us, but ultimately we want to create a healthy future, right? That's the ultimate goal. We don't want the rise of the machines. We don't want to have to call Arnold Schwarzenegger and to come rescue us and do all those things. But yeah, but it's yeah, it can be wild. Change can be wild. I'm not opposed to making change. I love AI. I think it's a great tool for us. But even the hammer and screwdriver I have in my garage, if I use them wrong, they can do a lot of damage.
correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, well said. So let's shift a little bit here. Talk to me about what's a trend Guam's leadership need to be paying attention to in the next 12 months.
Yeah, I would just say that the education gap, technology education gap, that's something that I think that we
So
need to pay
basically,
attention to.
workforce development.
Yeah, workforce development, and particularly what in the technology realm, if that's a gap, how do we fill that? What are we doing in the education systems to counter that?
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's one wild idea you'd love to see
Ooh.
take shape on Guam by 2030?
Okay, so I was looking at a couple of ideas, but this is one I kind of stuck out to me as I was thinking about it. Is a Pan Pacific CHamoru innovation corridor. So starting some blockchain fund that leads to community investment, and that part of this funding, really the funding helps makes the decision of what's going on, and I think that's perfect for scaling a spirit of mutual respect and interdependence, uh, well within Guam's innovative future. It's got to be about money, right? This blockchain currency generating money, creating a fund so that you can develop these ideas. That's what it's going to take to make, uh, I think, to make change.
Hmm, that's very innovative.
Yeah, yeah. I'm like, you gotta think. You gotta. That's what you gotta do when you're thinking as a futures, right? You gotta think of something that's almost seems impossible, but this blockchain could be a source of crowdfunding, right? You get your investors in there and start with maybe 50 island-born startups focusing on agriculture or smart island technology or cultural
Oh,
media, and make sure those profits flow back into the community, not out, but it comes back into the community. Uh, I think that's how you have to start looking at what's the wildest thing that I can do that's going to generate the resources that I need.
yeah, yeah. All right. So good information. This has been a great talk. I knew it
All
would
right.
like stretch our brains and make us think here. So if someone listening today wants to work with you or learn more about your futurist frameworks,
Yeah,
where should they go?
I make it easy. GlenGuyton.com. So all of our social media, everything is Glen Guyton. So that's just my name. You can email me at glenG@glenguyton.com. I'm easy to find.
All right, good. So final question. What's one challenge or message you'd leave with Guam's change makers today?
Yeah, this is an easy one for me. Is I would say remember who you are, know who you want to be, and build a future to get there.
Mm, well said and straightforward. Glenn, thank you so much for being a guest on the Innovate Guam podcast
Yes,
and
sir.
sharing your frameworks uh, for ways to think about the future and think about innovation and using culture and people as the important levers they are to change and innovation. I think we learned a lot for my audience. I hope you learned something today. I certainly did. Watch for my podcast dropping weekly at the beginning of each week. Follow me on all social media platforms, including Substack. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and interact with all of my content. And please read my Innovate column with the Guam PDN the first and third Fridays of each month. Until next time, see you and remember no matter whether you're at work, at home, or at play, always innovate. Thank you.